see several people logging in. We'll get started here in about 5 minutes. And I do have some polls to put up today. We might as well go ahead and get one started in the area of competence. This has to do with the fact, if you've had a chance to read the book, you know that Ben Franklin features pretty prominently in the beginning of the chapter on competence. And so our question is, which of these is not an actual quote from Ben Franklin? He that lies down with dogs shall rise up with fleas. There never was a good war or a bad peace. Well done is better than well said. Or love your neighbor as yourself. Which of these is not a Ben Franklin quote? Of course, this plays back to the first chapter of our book on the topic of competence. And people are weighing in with their votes. We'll keep that up for here a minute or two till more people have logged in and had a chance to vote. I will say that so far, this question has not tricked anybody. So no pressure on you if you're voting. You don't want to pull down the percentage here of accuracy. So Ben Franklin in the book, pretty prominent character and an unusual character. If you've ever read anything extra about him and the Philadelphia Library or the fire department or some of the other things that he created, he was the ultimate community development specialist. Very inquisitive and creative in his thinking, and one of our founding fathers. So if you are just logging in, and there seems to be several of you jumping on now, welcome. We're glad to have you. And you should find a poll that is already in progress with a few quotes from Ben Franklin, who features prominently in the first chapter of our book. Feel free to weigh in on that poll. And of course, our chat boxes are open as well. Feel free to post comments there, pose questions, give feedback within the chat anytime during our 30-minute session. We're glad you're here. Glad to have so many people reading John Maxwell's book, 21 Indispensable Qualities of a Leader. We're up to 165 people now that are registered and either attending live in class or watching the videos after the fact. And of course, when you get reminder emails each week or recap videos, it does include a survey link in which you can use that to give further feedback on the class. We welcome your feedback, and we take that and try and make changes and improvements as we go. So anybody else want to weigh in on the poll here? Which of these is not an actual quote from Ben Franklin? Give you 15 more seconds, then we're going to reveal and do an introduction of our guest speaker today. Okay, we're going to end the polling. Here are the results. Which of these is not an actual quote from Ben Franklin? You know, Ben Franklin created the Farmer's Almanac and printed that, so there are a gazillion famous Ben Franklin quotes, because he wrote a lot of things for that almanac and was a prolific writer and speaker in other areas. And some of them are pretty fanciful and some of them are pretty memorable. But the majority has it here. The one that is not an actual quote from Ben Franklin is the fourth one, love your neighbor as yourself. But that reminds me of a new two-part class that's being developed, and we'll offer it online, hopefully here in a couple of weeks. It's going to be on the topic of engaging through neighboring and how to be an engagement force in your neighborhood, especially during this time, ways to engage and interact with your neighbors in a safe manner and the impact that can have. I already have a handout on that. If you're interested in that topic, feel free to email me. I'd be happy to email you the handout material, but we will be launching that class in a few weeks as well. So that's an opportunity to share that. So good to have everybody on today. If you are able, go ahead and mute your mics, because the video will focus on whoever is talking, and we'll get today's session on competence begun. I wanted to be sure and introduce our guest speaker, guest teacher today. It's Jackie Spainhauer. Jackie has been with the University of Missouri Extension for a little over a year. She is a county engagement specialist in agriculture and environment. She is actually headquartered up in Bethany, Missouri. She covers the counties of Harrison and Davies, Gentry, and Worth counties. So up in the northwestern part of the state, I believe, is where Jackie's coming to us from her home office. She works in areas of agriculture, business and policy, and community and economic development. And Jackie is especially well suited to address this topic of competence, I think, based on her background. Get a load of her professional background or degrees. She has a BA in art and design from the Iowa State University, and she has a master's in public management from the University of Nebraska. And now she's working in the area of community development. She has covered a broad swath there with her background, which I think is indicated that she's willing to be teachable and learn new things and develop new competencies. So I'll hand it over to Jackie as she covers this topic of competence. Jackie, welcome.
Thank you, David. I kept my screen on just long enough to say hi and you see who I am, but I'm going to turn it off because I do not have great internet at my house, and so I would rather have you hear me than see me. So I'm going to stop my video, and I am going to attempt to share my screen. And David, I have a comment that says host disabled participant screen sharing. Oh, you're still muted, so I can't hear you.
I'm sorry. If you're not able to share, I'll pull it up for you.
Perfect.
Okay. Here we go. Don't we love technology and learning new tricks?
David, I think you just need to give her a co-host.
I thought she had co-host.
She isn't, I don't think.
You may not have the internet capacity to do it anyway.
That may be. Well, we've got it pulled up now. Does everybody see that now? Okay, so Jackie, all yours audio-wise.
All right. Well, I am going to get myself prepared then, and so I can see what you're all doing. And so we are talking today about competence. And so I'm not sure that I'm doing very well if I can't run things right, but we're going to go there anyway. So what does it mean to have competence or to be competent? And I'm going to stress this should not be confused with passion, which one of our other co-hosts is going to talk about later, and should definitely not be confused with perfectionism, which we talked about in sessions both on character and charisma. I swear that pull to be perfect can really trip a lot of us up. I know it does me sometimes. But instead of striving to be perfect, maybe what we need to be is striving to be competent. So what is competence? I'm going to ask David to go to the next slide. So if you've been reading along in the book, you know that John Maxwell starts all of his chapters with a quote. And in this chapter, I really liked his own quote that he included, which says, "Competence goes beyond words. It's the leader's ability to say it, plan it, and do it in such a way that others know that you know how and know that they want to follow you." And I think the most important words in this quote is do it. Leaders who are confident, they just don't say it. They just don't plan it. They just do it. So have you ever been in a job interview and an interviewer asks you, what skills will you bring to this job? They're asking, what are your competencies? What do you say or how do you respond? You say something like, I'm a team player. I'm responsible. I can make decisions. I can type 150 words a minute. I can manage people. Oh, I can lead people. I want to stress that competence can mean different things to different people. It can depend on what your priorities are, what your strengths are, what you're good at, maybe where you are in your life. Are you a competent student? Are you a competent parent, employee? Think back of some of the people that you have looked up to based on their level of competence in a field, a sport, a discipline that you were interested in. Have the people that you have admired and looked up to over your life changed? I bet they have. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back a few years in my life and share with you today a few of the people that I looked up to and followed because of their competence. And so David, to the next slide. The year was 1984, and I was a gymnast at the height of my gymnastics career, which I'm going to let you know was probably about 4 years in total. And I was nowhere near the magnitude of this lady. But at that point in my life, I knew that the most competent person that I wanted to be like and follow was Mary Lou Retton. She was the best. In 1984, she took home the gold medal for all around and was the first woman, female gymnast, to do that. And she scored perfect tens on floor and vault. And in my eyes, she was the height of competence for gymnasts in the world. She helped me be better because I followed her lead. I practiced and I practiced and I practiced. And even when I hurt, I still practiced. And I was a better gymnast for it. So next slide. So now I've gone to high school and I looked up to this guy. Anyone know who he is? This guy's name is Chuck Mangione, and he is a musician, and I can't even describe how talented and competent he is at playing a trumpet. Now I know he's got a flugelhorn in that picture, but they sound the same. I guarantee it. My mother introduced me to his music at a young age, and I knew that I wanted to play the trumpet, and I wanted the sound coming out of that trumpet to sound just like his. Now he's a Grammy-winning award musician, and he is very competent at his skills. And I followed him. I followed everything he did. And I practiced and I practiced. And again, I practiced until my lips hurt. And even to this day, I can still play a few songs that he wrote. So very much admired him for his skill and competence in playing the trumpet. And the next slide, and this is finally, I'm in college. And David mentioned that I have a degree in art. My undergraduate degree from Iowa State is in art. And I enjoyed studying artists and the theory behind their work and to create my own art. And this guy, his name is Vasily Kandinsky, encompassed everything that I was interested in when it came to art and theory. I followed his color, his music, and I appreciated how he incorporated psychology and the shapes and line into his expressionist paintings. And in my mind, he reached a level of competence when it came to color and balance in his art that helped me work on my own art. Now, as a theorist, he kept growing, evolving, and his art evolved along with it. And to me, he was the most competent artist, and I wanted to learn and follow him, and I wanted to learn from him. So I've mentioned all of these people that have influenced my life in the past. And what did they do? They were competent in their skills to the point that I wanted to learn from them. I wanted to learn from their work, from their dedication, and I wanted to follow them. I wanted to model their competence and their skills. They were leaders to me because of what I felt were their competencies. So I want to stop and I want to do a quick check-in. I want to throw up in the chat some of the names of the people that you have admired in your life because of their competencies.
We'll watch for people's submissions of some names here, Jackie. Hey, those were great examples. And there's a myth about highly talented people that they're simply born that way. But all of your examples are people who certainly would have grown their potential because of practice.
Absolutely. You know, I would not say that I was born with any talent. I've had to practice my entire life. And so the idea that you're born with it is, it doesn't fit my opinions. And some people may differ with that, but I had to practice to be a good trumpet player. I had to practice my art, and I had to practice to be a good gymnast. And and it takes that Chris Body, I love it. David Lee, right there, trumpet player, perfect. So we've got Amelia Earhart, great.
Temple Grandin,
Mm-hmm.
got her recently, autism specialist. Gordon Ramsay. Margaret Creech, first federal employer who hired me. Someone wrote John Prine, Gloria Gaither, songwriter, Paul Kaufman, Andrew Botticelli, right?
Botticelli?
Just saw a video of him singing in a very vacant Italy in front of a big building. My big sisters, Amelia Earhart.
Brad Law, there's a name I know as well. Yes, we oftentimes look up to entrepreneurs and business owners that have been very successful, and we look at how we can model some of their different practices and how they treat their customers and they work with each other. So absolutely.
Oh, someone mentioned Abraham Lincoln. They're trying to pique my interest because of my love of Civil War history. Way to go, Craig. Abraham Lincoln.
Okay. Well, so let's go back to the PowerPoint, because Maxwell says that there are, and if we go to the next slide, David, Maxwell says that there are certain things that competent people do. And number one, they show up every single day. It doesn't matter how hard the work is that they have to do. It doesn't matter if it makes them uncomfortable. It doesn't matter that they don't have immediate answers. They show up, they get it started, and they get work done. They keep improving. They look at, how can I make this better through professional development, through active learning? How can they improve their products, their services? How can they improve themselves? So they keep improving. Number three, they follow through with excellence. Never expect something as good enough, something as good enough, but ask yourself, how can this product, this service be excellent? Think of Apple here. Do they rest long after they come out with a new iPhone? I assume that they're probably already working on the next one before the first one's even sent out. They are on to the next version. So consider this and ask yourself, what's good enough for you? Is it just doing enough to get by? Or do you strive to be the best possible version of yourself? Are you that iPhone 12? Number four, they accomplish more than expected. Competent people go the extra mile. They don't stop and say, that's good enough. I've done enough. I don't need to do anything more today. What's the old saying, under promise and over deliver? Competent people do this every day. They over deliver. They keep moving forward. And finally, they inspire others. They take others with them on their journey. They provide encouragement and they lead by example. So in your field of study, your career, your interest areas at this point in your life, do you know anyone that lives by all five of these actions? Do you follow their work? Do you follow their life? Do you follow their achievements? Do you celebrate their achievements? So if we go to the next slide, John Maxwell gave us an example of somebody that David had mentioned before, Ben Franklin. He talked a lot about Ben Franklin at the beginning of his chapter, and he followed throughout his life these 5 examples that indicate how competent Franklin was. So you look back at that last slide. 1, they show up every day. At age 12, Ben Franklin started apprenticing with his brothers in a printing shop. And by the age of 20, so in 8 years, he was able to start his own printing business. To do that, do you think he showed up every day? Did he give every day his all and learn from his brothers so that he was competent enough to start his own business? Number 2, they keep improving. Now this is quoting Maxwell. Franklin's mind was curious and he continually sought ways to improve himself and others. He also mentioned that he graded himself daily on a set of 13 virtues. And those 13 virtues, if you are interested in knowing a little bit more about what he graded himself on, let me know. I have some of the info that I can share with you after the presentation today. Number 3, they followed through with excellence. When printing wasn't enough for Ben Franklin, he moved on to publishing. And he took on the annual task of publishing Poor Richard's Almanac, which David had mentioned, that provided information, tips, and entertainment for colonists. Number 4, they accomplished more than expected. If you look just at the few things that John Maxwell mentioned in this first part of this chapter that Franklin did, he co-authored the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the Treaty of Paris. He started his own publishing company. He did experience in electricity, invented bifocals, charted the Gulf Stream, led innovations in agriculture, developed daylight savings time. I may question that one because I'm not sure that I agree with it, but you see where I'm going with this? He accomplished so much in his lifetime. It was more than anyone could have expected. And finally, they inspire others. So Franklin was quoted as saying, "Hide not your talents. They for use were made." Benjamin Franklin exerted influence wherever he went, whether it was stateside or abroad. So to wrap up my quick presentation, I'm going to have David go to the next thing. John Maxwell gives us 3 ways to improve our competencies. Now, where do you consistently perform in your job? At your home, in your relationships? How can you apply these 3 ways to improve? The first one that he mentions is get your head in the game. Re-engage in your life, your job, your relationships. This may be tough because this may mean you have to take a hard look at what is important to you. What are your priorities? What are your strengths? What drives you? Do they align? Are they all in alignment? Maybe you're going to need to reevaluate. Figure out what it is and try to fix it. So get your head in the game. Number 2, redefine the standard. And remember, this is your standard. This is no one else's standard that you are setting. You're setting your own bar. Are you okay with cutting corners? Are you okay with a job that's done at 50%? Maybe. Strive to be your best. And this is where Maxwell is going with this. Make it matter. It's like I said, when it really counts, I can make it happen when it really counts. What is your really count? What really counts for you? When do you need to redefine that standard? And finally, the last thing that John Maxwell says is to find 3 ways to improve. I'm always looking at finding ways that I can improve myself. My personal target areas that I want to improve right now are communication, being more direct. Yes, I have a problem with that sometimes. and improving my conflict resolution skills. I actively look for professional development that can help me in these areas because I know in the future and where I have a vision of where I want to be in the future, having these skills mastered is going to help me level up. So what specific areas do you want to level up? And spend some time figuring it out. And then from there, invest some time and energy and actually do it. So I'm going to throw up one last picture here, and David beat me to the punch. Just in case you're curious, when I talked about Vasily Kandinsky, here is my art inspired by Vasily Kandinsky. And it's the only A I ever received on an art project in college. Probably explains why today I'm not an artist and I am talking about leadership. So that is the last of my slides.
Love the painting.
Thank you.
Very good.
It hangs on my mother's wall at her house. So.
Where everyone's greatest art hangs.
Oh, absolutely. You know, it's a little bit too big and it's framed in glass, so it can't go on the fridge, right? So I just thought we could spend just a little bit time now talking about what is it that we'd like to improve? What are some of the competencies we have? What are some of the things that we'd like to improve? And maybe share a few ideas on how we can do some of that. Thanks, Deb. If you like that, definitely go to look up Vasily Kandinsky. He is an amazing artist. Absolutely love him. But we've got some here. Patience is a competency. I need to be less impatient. Thank you, Lori. I agree completely. So what are some of the, oh, go ahead, David.
One of the commentaries I saw was about the importance of practice, that those who develop a competency have done just a little bit more. That's what practice is just a little bit more. And this commentator was encouraging people to think about what is your little bit more. Mm-hmm. That's kind of along these same lines. What is that one thing that if you just put a little bit more of practice into it, it would make a big difference.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So we've got here follow up and follow through, says Stephanie. Absolutely. You know, that's one of those things that once you find out where that strength is, where that passion is, you know, follow up and following through is so, it's kind of one of those skills that you'll just do because you're working on a project or a program or in a field that you're very passionate about. Let's see, strive to be a better leader from beginning to end. That is why we are here, Brenda. We are all trying to be better leaders. And this is how you do it. Self-development, personal development. Focus, less multitasking to better focus, says Sarah. Next Wednesday, I'll be back and I'll talk about focus. And so we'll see if I can help you there too, Sarah. Another focus, stop trying to multitask. You know, David, I think you bring it up a lot. I am in the process of reading a book called Crazy Busy right now.
Yes.
And I think it's one of your favorite books. And I've only got through like the first chapter so far. But he talks about, he had a quote in that book, I'm here, I'm there, I'm everywhere. And people get so drawn to, because we can do everything in the world now. The world, especially now through Zoom and through social media, everything is accessible. And so it's really hard to keep that focus. And so, you know, one of the things that I'm trying to work on for Sarah and Paul with focusing is focusing what I have an interest in and focusing what I feel I'm good at. And that's some of the things that I think that if we can all focus on some of those to a little bit higher extent, maybe we find out we're doing some things that we don't need to do. So what is it we need to focus on? Now I know that can't be applied to everybody's situation, but it's a start. Conflict resolution, listening skills. I'm right there. That's where I need to work on. I hate to copy, but patience and focus, absolutely. I like the use of the term level up. It's a good link. Thank you, Misty. Try and triumph is a little umph. Try and triumph is a little umph. I like that, Craig. Thank you. Charisma and communication. Absolutely. There's a thing, charisma. I would love to be more charismatic. We might have to have Trish come back and give us some more lessons on that. More conflict we're in, we'll be in that area. Absolutely. Ordinary and extraordinary is a little extra. Practice I've learned from Brooks, crucial conversations and motivational inquiry. Ooh, I've not read those.
Well, on this topic of practicing and putting in effort to, maybe your practice is reading more leadership books, maybe a goal to read one a month or something like that. Or maybe there's another competency you're wanting to work on that you can read about. That can be one way to practice. I've got a few quotes here about practicing that I thought were fun and perhaps educational. What are some, here are some famous quotes on practice, and asking people to pick which one's your favorite. I believe we learn by practice, Martha Graham. For the things we have to learn before we can do them, we learn by doing them. Gosh, Aristotle sounds like an extension agent with that quote. Learn by doing. Practice doesn't make perfect. Practice reduces the imperfections. Love that one. Champions keep playing until they get it right. An ounce of practice is generally worth more than a ton of theory. You know, extension has traditionally been all about hands-on activities, learning by doing, learning by practicing. It's a big part of the extension learning model, but certainly practice, practice, practice. And Jackie, it sounded like you had several years there where you were practicing to be a gymnast and many more years practicing to be a trumpet player.
Absolutely.
Those skills just don't develop on their own, do they?
They don't. And I'm just going to wrap up here with what Misty just put in the chat. Practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes progress. And that is spot on. So thank you for putting that up there, Misty. So
I'll share our results. Yeah, kind of along those same lines. Looks like this favorite quote, practice doesn't make perfect. Practice reduces the imperfection. Kind of along the same line as Misty's.
So
great quotes there.
Then he would throw his baton. Oh, I've had a few crazy band conductors in my life. So stories I could tell. But I think, David, that's our time. It's noon, and I have enjoyed this so much. So thank you for all coming on today.
We'll send out a recap, of course, and before you exit, give us a rating on today's class. Hopefully you've come up with an area, or you're thinking about some areas where you can practice or do work to improve your competencies in an area.
No, I just clicked onto a Zoom meeting.
We're glad to have you. Everybody, thank you for joining us, and we'll be covering the topic of courage on Friday. Dr. Joanna Reed Adams will be helping us further digest and understand the indispensable quality of courage, an important one. Finding much of this is applicable to our current situations. And thank you for joining us. Great job today, Jackie.
Thank you very much. We'll see you all Friday.